If I could have everybody's attention. So welcome, I guess, to your second workshop at WITI. My name is Sandy Carter, and I'm Vice President for IBM's Social Business Initiative worldwide. And I'm thrilled to introduce Laura Wolf. This is Laura's first WITI conference, and she's going to help us with the workshop today. We are going to be very hands-on. So on the middle of your table are some worksheets. And I know it's old-fashioned because it's paper. But we couldn't get it uploaded to the URL fast enough. We will put a paperless version up there too. You guys can go get it for your iPads, iPhones, Androids, whatever phone you have. But for this to be effective today, it will be a hands-on workshop. So we're going to expect you to leave with a couple of things, okay? So what we're going to do is, the first thing is I'm going to go through a couple of slides teaching you different concepts. And then we're going to break out and at each table your little worksheets will be there. And Laura will walk you through an exercise. So you have homework here at WITI. Isn't that great? Woohoo!
Don't shoot the messenger.
It's great because it's very actionable and you'll get to take something home with you. So the first thing I want you to notice is I have my Twitter handle up there. And I hope that everybody will follow me on Twitter because social is about a relationship, not a one-time, one and done. And I also have my blog there as well, so I'd love for you guys to subscribe to my blog as I travel around the world and I see fabulous things, like I was just in London, and the Queen is celebrating her Jubilee, 60 years, all done socially. She's got a Facebook page, she's got a Twitter hashtag, they actually have little window displays with the royal dog, and you can tweet to feed the royal dog treats. It's very fascinating what they're doing over there. Okay, but let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about your business. So on the worksheets on the table, the very first page looks like this. This is your social business action plan. And as we go through the day, you'll be filling out most of the areas of this workshop. If you look at the handout, when we do the breakouts, Laura will get up and I'll help walk around the tables, and we'll have a certain amount of time for each of the sessions. And we're hoping to get through the whole thing, although we're not sure, because usually it takes us about 8 hours, and we have an hour and a half. Okay, so we're going to do like speed social today. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I wanted to do is introduce you guys to the concept of social. Social, we believe, is bigger than just changing the way that we live, our personal lives, because I'm assuming most of you here have a Facebook account. Is that true? Raise your hand if you do have a Facebook account. Okay, great. So there are 5 errors that we see that have really impacted the way that we work, not just the way we live, but the way we work. The mainframe helped us to automate the way we work. Departmental computers helped us to decentralize management. PCs helped us to bring work home. Very exciting. And then you had the internet. And the internet caused a complete transformation. If you remember, if you're old as me and you can remember when the internet started, a lot of businesses did not see the business impact that the internet would bring, right? They thought it was just for personal use, for university use, very similar to that 5th era up there, which is social, the era that we have the privilege of being in today. That's going to transform the way every single person in this room works, not just today, but in the future as well. So what is that thing called social? Social business. Well, there are 3 characteristics of a social business, and we're going to contrast this to social media. So social media is really about using this for communications and marketing. But a social business is going to go beyond just marketing and PR. It's going to go into the way that you recruit new talent. It's going to hit the way that you do your sales. It's going to touch on the way that you do your supply chain. Whether you're a small business, a medium business, a large business, it's going to touch all aspects of your business. And what it's going to do is really help you with 3 characteristics that are demanded in today's global economy. The first is it's going to make your business more engaging. That means you're going to lose some control because you're going to do a 2-way dialogue. You're actually going to listen and talk, not just talk, push things out to your employees or to your customers. You're going to be transparent. So that means information doesn't just flow top down, it flows bottoms up, top down, side to side. It's going to be very transparent, which is very hard for a lot of businesses to really grasp. right? A lot of CEOs want to be the person who controls what goes down to employees. A lot of teams, sales and marketing, want to be controlling of the information that flows out to customers. And then finally, nimble. You're going to be faster. If you can imagine a faster pace than we're in today, social is going to make it even faster than we have today as well. Now on the right-hand side are some numbers. So IBM measures ROE. I don't know if you guys do, return on everything. You guys do that? So on the right-hand side is something from our Institute of Business Value. And what it shows is that those companies who've already embedded social into marketing, into supply chain, into every element of their business outperform on the marketplace. In fact, those who outperform financially on Wall Street with their profit, with their revenue, were 60% more likely to have already started down this path. Those are the early leaders, or the insightful leaders, if you would. So we talked about this, the difference between social media and social business. And the real element here, and one of the things we're going to be asking you to think through today, are your business processes. Because this is about inserting social into your business process. So social media, inserting social into your marketing and communications process. Social business, inserting it in every process. So I have a small furniture company who we work with, and they insert social into their supply chain, the way that they work with their suppliers. HR, I was just at an HR conference. All of the Fortune 500 today use social somewhere in the way that they recruit, the way that they do talent management in the marketplace. So it's going to touch every process in your business. Now, part of what's going to be really essential here for every woman in the room with this change in the way that we're going to work is that for you to be successful in the new world, you will have to live social, not just talk about social. So let me tell you what that means. I was going over to London, and I tweeted I was headed over to London, and the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of a very large bank, tweeted me back and said, hey, if you've got time and you're in London, I'd like to spend a couple hours with you. Now, IBM's a big company, but this particular bank, financial institution, had not allowed IBM into its doors in many years. And so, of course, when we got invited in, we made time to come and see them. They gave us 2 hours. They actually ended up, at the end of the day, when I came over there, they spent 4 hours with us. At the end of the meeting, a couple of the IBMers, who are Brits, said to this particular chief marketing officer, you know, we've been trying to talk to you guys for a long time. And we emailed you and we called you and you went and talked to us. And can you tell us why? You know, what can we do better? And so the CMOs turned and said, I'm going to be really honest. In today's world, you've got to be social. So the first thing I did when you emailed me, I looked for you on LinkedIn. You weren't there. I thought, well, maybe Facebook. Weren't there. Maybe Twitter. Weren't there. You didn't have a blog. So I thought, in today's world, what could you teach me? What could you teach me? So they expected that that person was a person who lived social, right? Not someone who had just heard about it in a conference, but someone who lived it. So this is going to be really important for each woman in the room, that you don't just talk about social, your company just doesn't do social, but that you personally are part of the new social movement. So, how many of you guys have a LinkedIn ID? Okay, almost all of you. Excellent, okay. Make sure you look at your profile. Make sure you've got a consistent brand and image with your profile. Make sure you have recommendations that are out there. Check out what groups you use, and make sure that you're participating out there. You can link it together with your Facebook and your Twitter, but make sure that you're active. One of the things this particular CMO said to one member of my team was, I saw you had a LinkedIn ID, but you had not been out there since 2009. Sound familiar to anybody? So make sure you're checking that out. Twitter, how many of you guys are on Twitter? Most of the room. If you're not, make sure you get on Twitter. This is TweetDeck. TweetDeck is what I use. You can also use Hootsuite. I use both on my iPad and my iPhone. And what this allows me to do is to search for different topics that are important to me. I can send tweets, I can send pictures, like of the Queen's Jubilee. I got to send a picture of that little tweet for the dog. I can follow certain people, I can search on the hashtags, I can do everything that I need to do here to really listen not just talk, but listen to the conversations that are going on. Now, how many of you guys have social inside your company? Okay, so social is coming inside of your company too, whether you're a small company, a medium company, or a large company. And why is that? Well, if social is going to be embedded into every one of your business processes, think about how many of your competitive processes aren't just externally facing, but are also internal. The way you communicate with your employees, the way that you manage a relationship with a business partner, right? You don't want that all on Facebook for a competitor to see. It's something that's private. So inside your corporation, we'll also be talking about how you might use social. IBM does a study every year, and in 2011, that was the 5th year we did the study. It was the first time that use of social inside of an organization outpaced use of social outside an organization. So 43% of businesses now have social as the primary form of communication inside of a business. Not email, and not telephone, not paper, but social inside of a corporation. 43% versus 41% who are using it externally as well. So I'm now going to turn over to Laura. So she's going to talk to you a little bit about how we do the worksheets. This will be the first worksheet in your package. Laura?
Thank you. So if everybody will go to the table, you should have a stack, and you'll find there's 3 different stacks. I apologize for that. But you'll get the one that has the pink and white sheet that looks similar to what you're seeing up here on the screen. All right, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to take a social inventory. And what we're going to do there is, if you're looking for some, there's some over here on this table. If we're going to do a social inventory, and basically what we're going to do is go through and identify where you're currently using social and what you're doing and what tools you're using. And if one that you're using is not listed here, feel free to write it in. But we're going to start with community. So that would basically be a group that brings together people who have a common interest inside of a topic or we'll just leave it at a topic, to share ideas, to share content, to ideate together, to share information, to get answers, etc. So that is the definition of community. So as we're going, so if you're using it internally, you can, either if you're using IBM Connections, thank you. If you're using something else, feel free to write it in. And then if you're doing something similar externally, either circle what you're using or write it in. Microblogging, similar to Twitter, but from in an internal type of perspective. You, again, could be using IBM Connections. You might be using Twitter externally to tweet out things about your company, to tweet out new product launches, to tweet out conferences, etc. So if you're using some external microblogging tool, either, like I said, circle the one that's there or feel free to write it in. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes, and we're going to kind of walk around the room, and we'll answer any questions. I'll go through a couple more of these just so that you some of the more obscure ones. Gaming, is everybody familiar with gaming or heard of that before? I'm getting some yeses and a lot of blank stares. So gamification is basically that idea of making something fun, a task fun. So you're rewarding somebody for doing that, like the ability to earn a badge or to earn recognition through your participation. So that's the idea of gaming or gamification, where you can become an expert or, think about it in airline miles. You can become, an executive platinum and get your little executive platinum badge type of thing. So different levels are being provided there. Let's see, some of the other ones that maybe aren't quite so obvious. I think everybody's familiar with forums and discussion forums. Pretty obvious, right? So inside of that one, you might think about ideation as well and being able to ask and answer questions. Are there any other ones up there specifically that people have questions on? Y'all are a quiet bunch. All right, I will, go ahead. About gaming? Sure, so gamification is that whole idea behind you're trying to drive participation and you're trying to reward specific behavior. So it's the idea of, in airline terms, I fly so much, I get different reward levels. And for those reward levels, I earn different things. But the idea is that you're trying to either not force, but hang a carrot out to encourage people to do what it is you want them to do, whether that is to maybe complete a profile or it is to continue to comment or add content to the system so that the system becomes more valuable because there's greater knowledge in the system. So basically, it's that idea of reward for behavior. Did that answer your question? Sure. Like kudos.com is a badging, and Badgeville is another company that does gamification. Those are probably the two.
Bunchball.
Bunchball. Thank
I think
you.
they're on the sheet too, right?
Yes, I think they are. Yep, Bunchball. Kudos badges, yep.
On the forum one, what are the forums on that you would suggest that you do that? What does that mean exactly?
So from an internal perspective, obviously, IBM Connections provides a forum. There are other competitive products that also do that. From an external perspective, the ones that are listed here are Gala. Can you read those? Other discussion forums out there. There's discussion forums in LinkedIn, inside of the groups that you can participate in. So that would probably be another place that you would be doing that. I'm trying to think of some of the larger ones.
Banking, ABA.
Yeah, banking, ABA.
Banking, almost every industry has one. Retail has one. Banking has one. Healthcare has many. I think there's like 183 healthcare forums that are out there today.
Yeah, dope on digital for healthcare. Yes? So community would bring together multiple social elements. It might have a discussion forum as part of it. It might have files as part of it, or bookmarks, or a blog. So it could have a whole bunch of these elements brought together where that group is sharing inside of all of those different elements.
So where would you put like, we call it Nisa. So Nisa is, what I'm doing is fast news, and it is a community, and it's also a forum. That's a way of getting a lot of users, a lot of people very quickly. So what would you?
It's both. I mean, because there's a discussion forum that's an element of that, right? And then it's a community as it brings together the people. Mhm. Location. Location, location, location. So location is the ability, do you have an iPhone? Anybody who has an iPhone, anytime you download an app and it asks, can I use your current location? Because it wants to recommend things to you based on your location, whether that's like around me where it can recommend a restaurant, it can find you. My favorite was I took my children, it seems like we always have children examples, I took my children to Six Flags and they gave me this little bot, and the bot was supposed to be for me to go, so I didn't have to stand in line, I could scan which rides we wanted to go in and it would tell me when to show up for that ride. But it followed me around the park, and mysteriously, every time I got near a retail shop in the park, it was like, the place right across the street from you is offering a 10% discount on all t-shirts. So it was all about location. They didn't care that I was in line for their rides. They wanted to know where I was so they could, encourage me to go buy or shop in their stores. Any other questions? All right. That one wasn't so hard, was it? As homework goes.
Okay, good. So this will be just as reference for you, so save this. And as you learn about other tools, I'm going to show you some examples. You can add those into your worksheet. So the next thing we're going to go through is typically what we do with any company who wants to start their social journey. And we walk them through a set of 6 different elements. We're not going to go through all 6 today, but we're going to touch on some of these. So the first thing typically you start with are your goals. What do you want to do with social, right? You're not just doing social to do social. You're doing social to accomplish a business goal. And you got to make sure that your culture's aligned with using social, because there are some inhibitors to that. You've got to have trust. I started saying that social is about a relationship. Every relationship's built on trust. So this is different than the internet, where it was really based on technology. This is based on a personal relationship. We're going to talk about engagement. Engagement is a big buzzword right now. Engagement is about the way that you take your audience, whoever that is, and you move them from being a spectator watching you, your company, to being a participant. Could be helping you to develop a new product, providing you input, whether you like their input or not like their input, they're now participating with you. We're going to talk about how you select that right process to start with. And then probably one of the funnest areas I like is we're going to develop a crisis management plan. What do you do if someone says something bad about your company? How do you manage that? How do you handle that? And then hopefully we'll get all the way to the end, which is on the analytics side. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how companies are looking at these business goals and their culture. So this is an example of Bayer. Bayer is a German company. By the way, just a fun fact, Germany right now leads the world in social deployment for business. And they do that because they start with a business process and they insert social into the process versus, oh, I saw that here, let me just add social in, or, my competitor's doing it, I want to do it. They start with a business process and they say, we want to make that process more competitive. What is it that we do? So that's what happened with Bayer. And Bayer, we started out with their goals, which is what you guys are going to do here in a second for your own businesses. And goals I'm looking for here are not, I want 10 million Facebook fans. I want, the top rated YouTube video. That's not what I'm looking for. That might be the way you reach your goal, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for your business goal. So for this example, Bayer, I'll just look at their first goal. They wanted to use social to capture intellectual capital. Why do they want to do that? By 2015, Bayer will have retiring 50% of their scientists. 50%. Now they make money on filing patents in their material sciences space. So that's a big business challenge for them, right? So I don't really care if they get 1 million hits on YouTube video. They need to capture that intellectual capital. So that was the number one goal that we looked at for them to start their social journey, was how do they capture intellectual capital from their employees and how do they onboard their new employees faster so that as their retiring employees leave the business, they've got a new batch of folks who can come in and work on the patents. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay. So based on that goal, so that was their business goal, so start thinking about your own business goal because you'll get a work session here in a second. What we also wanted to look at was their culture. So in the lower left-hand side, the CEO actually drew this on the board for me, and he said, if I want to capture all this intellectual capital and I want to onboard employees faster, I can't be top down. I, as a CEO, can't dictate on high and then have everything flow down. It's too slow. 2015 is coming fast. So while we're not going to change the organization, we do need to add an additional way that employees are going to communicate. And you can see that little diagram over to the right where everybody's kind of communicating with everybody. They're forming groups. They're networking out. So they're really changing the way their culture was working, not top down anymore, but transparency of information. So based on these two goals, they started their journey, and I'll just kind of tell you, they've now greatly increased the use of what they're doing with social. They have a social patent process. So they took their patent process and they opened it up to where they had a community-based approach. So I think you asked about a forum or a community-based approach with activity streams where they could each tag along, each alert each other on what types of information and knowledge was being shared across the organization. And you can see of the 8,000 people in their division, they now have almost all of them participating, which was a big deal for this German company that thought it might be a little hard to get their German employees to be social online. Okay? Statement at the top is really important. You guys could leave here with a great social plan, but your culture is really most important. Culture eats strategy for lunch. So if your CEO or your division head isn't going to be flexible in the way that information is communicated or doesn't want employees to communicate on tough issues, this might be very hard for you, for your company is what I mean. Does that make sense? Yeah, let me give you one more example. This is TD Bank, a Canadian bank. And one of the interesting things that they did, they're, I think, the 6th largest bank in North America, by the way, 85,000 employees, is they had a couple of goals. They wanted to make sure whatever they did socially, both internal and external, adhered to their values. So they needed to make sure those values were incorporated in every employee's social interactions. They wanted to deliver real business outcome, right? Not just to do it for fun. And they wanted to make sure they identified risks ahead of time. So a couple of quick examples. They opened on Sunday in Canada. This is earth-shaking in Canada. Most banks, unlike the US, aren't open on Sunday. Before they opened, they created a social community for their employees to ask them, what do you think? Do you want to open on Sunday? What do you think they said? No way, right? You guys are all here working on Sunday, but they didn't want to work every Sunday. So they used that community to shape it. Okay, well, will this make us more competitive? Yes. Will that keep more jobs here? Yes. So let's talk about how we could work this out. So they actually worked through this with the employees so that when they did open on Sunday, the employees were bought into opening on Sundays. Real business outcomes, they released a mobile app for banking, and they tested it first with a group of influential customers. So they opened it up and kind of had it co-developed with customers, changing their custom or their culture of usually only developing things with their employees' ideas, not just bringing in all the comments from their employees as well. So they have completely changed their culture inside of TD Bank and the way that they've worked with their clients as well. Now, one of the ways that you can do this inside of a company, whether you're small, medium, or large, is by setting up a digital council. This is one of the best practices that we've seen across the board. So what is a digital council? Well, typically you have a two-in-the-box structure. So you've got someone from maybe sales and someone from HR coming together to initiate a project, someone from IT and someone from marketing coming together to initiate a project, maybe someone from supply chain and someone from marketing coming together to initiate a project. So it's got two in the box. Digital council could either be virtual members, meaning that it's not their day job, which is the way I started the first digital council at IBM. That's the way I started it. Or what we've grown up to now, which is we actually have people paid to be part of the digital council. Activities of the digital council include community management. So how do you get employees talking, right? If you're going to put up a site and you want them to talk about Sunday, how do you make them feel comfortable about that discussion point? That's all done in the way that you manage a community. They look at setting up centers of excellence, which is about education of employees and of customers and people who are going to be communicating with customers. They look at a content strategy. How do you share information in the right way? They look at a reputation and risk management plan, and they measure. They figure out how you want to measure the success of your social initiative. So one of the things that you'll look at on your first sheet that you talked about for your social plan, which is, do you have a digital council? Do you need a digital council? And if so, how do you get started with it? Do you have dedicated employees there, or do you have it managed on a virtual way? So we pause there, see if there's any questions about the culture or the digital council. Yes, ma'am?
You mentioned that to participate in the digital council, you pay. Not sure I understand.
Well, when I first started the digital council, we had people volunteer to be part of the council. So we needed someone from marketing, so someone from marketing volunteered to be part of the council. That was not their day job. They got paid for doing whatever their normal role was, but in addition, they took on an additional responsibility, which was to be part of the digital council. Today, we actually have a dedicated group whose day job is to be part of the digital council. Does that make sense?
So it's your primary responsibility.
Primary responsibility.
I was thinking you actually had people pay into some fund.
Oh, no, sorry. Thank you for asking that question. That's good. Any other questions about this? How many of you guys have a digital council in your company today? Okay, good. Any other questions on this before? Because now we're going to ask you guys to fill out worksheets around this as well. Ready? Okay, so you're first going to start with your cultural assessment, so grab your worksheet.
All right, it's the one that looks like this. It's, again, not in the staple, well, it actually is in a stapled set, but it's the front page of a stapled set. All right, I'm going to give you we're going to go through it together, but each of your horizontal lines you're going to mark twice. Once for your current state and once for your desired state. So they may be one and the same, but they might not be. And all answers are fine. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just where you currently are and where you hope to be. So let's start with boundaries. So does your organization currently work well across departmental, divisional, geographic boundaries? And like, think of a team inside of your organization currently. Are there members from different geographies, from different divisions, from different departments? If so, you're probably closer to the cross-functional cooperation side than the isolated functions side. But you might also ask yourself, how easy is that to do? If it's really easy, then you're probably talking about you're a 5 currently. If that's something you desire, then you would put a D in the 5th column for desired, and maybe you're currently at, say, you're midway between the two. So you'd put a C in the box underneath 3. Does that make sense? Okay, so I will go ahead and kind of give you some things to think about for each of those. So that was boundaries, so hopefully you've got that one answered at this point. So let's think about teaming a little bit. So think about your organization. Is your organization one where people kind of hoard knowledge? They have that internal Rolodex going, and you have to like basically bribe them or pay them off in favors or trinkets to get the information from them? If that's your type of company, you're probably closer to the individual competitive versus are your people rewarded more for the amount of information that they share? Does that make sense? If you're rewarding people for the amount of information that they're sharing and how they're helping other people and freely doing that, then you're closer to team-oriented. Everybody got a C and a D for teaming? All right, I'm going to keep moving. Learning. So what is your learning culture? Is your learning something that's very methodical and done at specific time frames and done in specific ways? Then you're probably closer to the slow adapting new skills side versus are you somebody, is your corporation one that basically encourages that continual learning and mentoring and the ability to subscribe to experts and to knowledge topics and assets that enables you to stay current on all different types of things all the time? Like for me, the perfect description of that is I can be just as smart as the experts inside of IBM 10 minutes later because they put their information out there and I subscribe to them. So I instantly know, right? So that puts us further over on the continuous learning culture side. All right, everybody got a C and a D on that one? Okay, some of y'all, no pencils moving. You guys must have it all up here. You're much smarter than me. Management styles, controlling and delegating, that's pretty obvious. But I'm going to kind of give you a few other coaching or management styles to think about, all right? Because maybe those two don't describe your environment. So visionary. So leaders articulate where the group is going, but not necessarily how you're going to get there. So they're basically kind of inspiring innovation and risk-taking and creativity. That's probably more towards the right side than the left. Coaching, kind of that one-on-one, helping you to set goals, helping to align your goals with the company's goals. That, again, is probably more a right side behavior, unless it looks like micromanaging, and then it's on the left-hand side. Then it's a 1. It's all the way over here. All right? What about affiliative? It really emphasizes teamwork. It helps to basically connect people to people and to bring harmony to an organization. Again, a very right side type of management style versus left hand. Democratic. When I first read that one, I went, wow, that one's got to be left hand side. Just sounds bad. Sounds like someone's going to tell me exactly what to do. But I guess not really, because democratic is the ability to vote, right? So bring consensus, right? So it's kind of like having an idea, but collecting the knowledge and wisdom of the crowd. So again, really a right side type of behavior versus a left side. Unless, of course, it's used during a crisis. If you use it during a crisis, what do you think it becomes? If I want to take a vote to settle a crisis, then it's left side all the way, right? Okay. Let's see. How about commanding, military-style leadership? Which side do you think that one goes on? Left, all the way on the left. All right, everybody have a C and a D under management style. Okay, I'll take that silence as a yes. Horizontal communication. Is your company kind of the one that Sandy showed where communication flows, the executive says something and it starts flowing to those managers and from those managers to those managers, et cetera? Or is it something that's more freely open for communication to flow, maybe horizontally, maybe vertically, maybe, from one person in a division to another person in a division? If it's that more free-flowing, you're on the right. More that formal channel that Sandy described, you're on the left. Everybody got a C and a D? All right, how about open communication? How many of your executives speak in code? Left side, right? Let's see.
Laura, while you're doing that, one of the things I would just want to make sure I emphasize that this is the #1 success factor in whether your company will be successful for social. So I know a lot of executives, and maybe even some of you are sitting here going, what the heck is this? I came to learn about social and I'm going through culture. But social is transforming the way that you work, and therefore it is a transformation. So if your company doesn't see it as a transformation, you will fail.
And
flat out.
Some of these things will also help you to understand, are you really ready? And maybe before you're ready, you need to address some of these areas. So it's helping you to see what could potentially be some roadblocks or stumbling blocks for you as you move forward creating your social agenda or journey, right? So that you understand what you're going to have to do to get from point A to point B.
Let me just share one story. So we have this one client who they decided they were going to go social and ask their clients to provide them ideas on their next set of products. So they actually put up a community site and wanted people to share. And as they were trying to get clients to share, they had the site up for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, the CEO pulled down the site. So I called him up and I said, what happened? He goes, did you read those comments? I said, yeah, I really read those comments. They looked really good, right? And he goes, that's not where I want to go. My direction is this way. Customers want to go that way. Not good. So he pulled down the site. This is a true story. He pulled down the site because he thought he was ready. This is actually what inspired us to do this cultural assessment, is he thought he was ready, but he didn't really think through what social was going to mean. Was that other people were going to be able to give ideas, and he was the CEO that thought it was his idea.
He was that autocratic management style we were talking about earlier.
No, he was actually removed after 9 months. And the site went back up. But not all of them are removed. And this is, if when I see executives kind of rolling their eyes when we go through this, and some will go, skip over the goals and skip the culture, we can just go ahead and get started, I know that we are in trouble. So.
Thank you. All right, so let's just go ahead and finish up. So risk tolerance, I think initiative is pretty straightforward. Risk tolerance. The best way to answer this question is to ask yourself, what happens to you if you make a mistake inside of your company? If it's really, really bad, you're over here on this side. If it's a learning experience, you're on that side. All right? Pace. Do y'all go fast or you go slow? Are you the tortoise or the hare? Right? All right, rules and process. Another good way to answer that question is, what happens if you break a rule? What happens if you decide to do something maybe a better way or to try to improve the process? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That should help answer that one. Hierarchy. Do you have a lot of it or a little of it? That one's pretty straightforward. All right, so now that you have your C's and D's marked on here, did anybody find any glaring spots where you went, there's something we might have to address? Anybody? Or is everybody good where they are and think you're ready to go? Quiet bunch. I'm standing between them and drinks or something. Oh, go ahead.
Mine was controlling versus delegating. I'm a new manager and I'm building an IT solution for a recruiting firm.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm hiring people that have talents but don't necessarily have the skills. And it's very hard for me to delegate more. Although the business model is very decentralized, it's hard for me to not control the processes and delegate more what I would do.
So, and therein lies the challenge. So start to think about how can different social elements or behaviors maybe help you to do that, where you could take the knowledge that you have and share it more broadly so that everybody can pick up on it, but you don't have to do every single step. You know, so thank you for sharing.
Internally through social media.
You can do it internally through different social tools, yes. Like IBM Connections.
So I'll
I
give
should
you,
be
an,
my
I'll
manager,
give you,
I have to
I'll
say
give
that,
you an
though.
example. So for instance, home improvement store, they had set up a community, a site, a social site of their own, and they had a particular product. They started getting a lot of clients to say, well, you know, I can't use the product as is, can't use the product as is, can't use the product as is. So one client said, look, I've modified the product. I'll work with the manufacturer and I'll help change that product. So the manager of that particular division actually got a little upset because he said, why is that customer doing my job? Right? It's kind of maybe a little bit like you, wanted to control it. But social actually helped him to delegate it to customers versus even delegating it just to employees. And you have to get comfortable with taking that particular step, right? So Apple today, I don't know, you guys probably know this, Apple does more support by customers supporting other customers than Apple supporting their customers, right? That's another example of not being as controlling.
Right. Forrester did a great total economic impact report on that, on the total economic impact of using communities for support. And it talks exactly about that. And there's lots and lots of customer examples of people doing that. But it is about letting go of control and allowing yourself to create these kind of army of advocates who can allow, you know, a customer to answer a customer question. Because in actuality, they're the ones using it. They may know best.
Yep.
There are some areas where things need to be done a certain way.
Mhm.
You don't have a choice. Legally, you have to do it. You have to help your buyers,
Yep.
let people introduce medicines onto the market. It just depends what.
I agree, totally. There are certain situations where you have to follow all the rules and you have to follow them to the T, right?
If
And
you're not, then that's a problem.
right.
That's right. So maybe, so then you know that. So then what you would not do is you wouldn't say, hey guys, come help me create a new medicine, right?
Yeah.
So, but see, knowing that helps you. So that's pretty black and white. But there may be other things that your management team say, you know what, in this area, I don't really care what the customer thinks here because I think we have a new direction that everybody's going to want, right? Kind of the Stephen Jobs model. So don't ask about that, because then if you ask about that and you don't listen, that's worse than having asked the question. So this is really, again, you know, as Laura said, this isn't a right and a wrong. This is about understanding where are you willing to take input, where are you willing to take ideas, and then adopting social in those ideas, right? Like if TD Bank had decided, we're going to ask the employees about working on Sunday, but we don't really care what they say. We're opening on Sunday anyway. That whole thing would have failed. That make sense? So that was something they took. But if they said, should we do SOX compliance or not, that wouldn't be a question they would pose because they have to do SOX compliance, right?
Another place I've seen it where you're not necessarily going to, you know, inside of making a medicine, open that up, but inside of the patent process, a lot of times there's a lot of good ideas that are, and we have companies that are using it to file their patents because they're able to find out some of the, you know, create best practices so they can reuse those and then open that up to ask ideas for those best practices. All right, here we go. All right, so basically what we're going to do from here is, you know, I want you to come up with 4 business goals in your mind. Not like Sandy said, not I need 1,000 or 10,000 or a bazillion Facebook followers, or I need to get on LinkedIn or Twitter, but actual business goals. You know, increase market share, increase customer satisfaction, you know, something to do with customer support. I don't know if any of y'all are in customer support or not. So think of business goals, things that maybe you would find in your annual report or someplace else. Business goals. All right, 4. At least 2. Everybody got a couple in mind? All right. If you've got more than one, prioritize them real quick. Which ones would be the top ones you'd go after? Because this is basically what we go through with our customers. We ask them to focus on business goals, business things that they want to. And Sandy gave you some great examples with TD Bank and with Bayer Material Sciences. So, we've started with that business goal. We have helped them to prioritize those goals and said, okay, if this is your number one goal, how can we impact that? And that's what we're going to work on next. So what I'd like you to do is turn to the second page, the page behind the cultural assessment. All right? And it should look similar to the bottom here. So I want you to take your first goal and put it over here underneath the goal column. So in the next column, I want you to write down a few things that are challenges to you achieving that goal. What are the roadblocks? The things that could be, stumbling that are preventing you from doing that. All right? So I'll give you like a minute or a few seconds, because we're doing this at warp speed. Normally we'd have entire conversations around this. All right? In the next column, basically issues. Again, things that maybe from an external perspective that could get in the way. And then most importantly, who is the audience that goal is impacting? Both from a positive perspective, so if I make that goal, whose life is that going to make better? And how? And if I don't make that goal, whose life is it going to impact? And how? And you might be asking, well, why is that important? The reason that that's so important is these are the people that you're going to need to have to go to get buy-in. Those are the executives that Sandy was talking about when you form this alliance, right? So we need to know who's going to be impacted and who we need to get in the boat with us rowing, right? So we need to understand who it's impacting. Sounds obvious, right? But how many times do we start here and we end up over there? And we totally skipped everything in the middle. Sandy said we start with many, many customers, and they'll go, here's our goal and here's the answer. Here's what we need to do. And we'll say, well, who's that impacting? Oh, it doesn't matter, here's the answer, right? And we know we're in trouble. All right, so then the last bit is to think through, potential social initiatives that could help. So this is just an example. So if the goal was to reach 15% market share, some potential social initiatives that this customer thought of while we were doing this was to provide a physical perception for an online channel. Build an online relationship, what Sandy was talking about. It's, gone are the days where we can just push and have a one-way dialogue with our customers. I mean, think about it. What's the first thing y'all do when you go to buy a new anything of any value? Do you go online? You look for reviews. Does it have to be somebody you know? No. And the more reviews, the better, right? The more articulate, the more comments it has, the more ratings it has, the more information I can gather about it, the better. The better I feel about making my decision, right? So we need to build that relationship. How do you do that? So they started thinking about, well, how do we do it? We can build a virtual cafe. We can, expand social ambassadors. So this is all about brainstorming, sitting down and having a penalty-free zone to come up with every crazy idea that you can come up with, and we'll vet them later, right? Just get them on paper so that you can start thinking through, is this a valid way to approach this or not? Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. If you have questions, you can throw up your arms. Sandy or I will answer them. And then we'll keep moving.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you providing the deck?
Yes.
Yes. They haven't given us the URL yet, but that is our intention. All right, any other questions? Are y'all ready to move on? Oh, here's a question, go ahead.
Do you have any ideas as to how to follow up with customers when you have limited amount of time to do everything needs to be done throughout the day? Follow up with post sales or getting back to your customers through social media or any type of automation, things like that. There's time management issue, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, there are things that can automate that, but then you have to ask the question, do you want that to be personalized or not? And that's something that we're going to get into. And the value of that personalized two-way relationship versus just my automatically throwing back a response to say, hey, I got your message, or something along those lines. And I think that, kind of going back to your point, it really depends on kind of the industry you're in and the situation. I don't know if that helped.
So I totally understand the technical side of the social business. How do you convert to customers to come there with the get into the game? Because I find it difficult, it's hard to get them. You have a tumbler, you box, but it's hard to get them on. So
That's what we're going to cover in engagement. So that's where we're going to move to next.
Yep.
Yeah, that's our next area.
You're a great lead-in.
Yep. Yep.
Hold that thought. Any other questions? All right, so just to give you another idea of what this can look like, some goals, increasing staff. And again, I'm not going to go through this, but it gives you the idea of you need to move from the left all the way to the right, and you can't skip steps. You can't do the, skip go and collect $200, not without going to jail. All right. I think we just covered that, so we're good there. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So if you think about what you've done so far, and I know this, you're going through your cultural assessment and your goals, right? You've just done that. The next area we're going to talk about is engagement, and I'm going to give you a few examples of how to get that engagement going. So the first thing you need to think about is trust, and how do you gain trust? Because people are not going to engage with you if they don't trust you, right? So think about, a friend or an acquaintance, or, someone that you don't know. If you don't trust them, you're not going to share things with them. You're not going to come to Tumblr. You're not going to go to their blog because, you don't know what they're going to do with the information, or you don't know if the information they've given you is something that's of value. So let me give you a couple of examples here. We're not going to develop a trust plan just because we're not going to have enough time. But in the deck, we'll give you a sample little trust plan that you can fill in. So trust is really important, and there are 3 elements here that matter in trust. One is that you're transparent and open, so that you don't try to hide things, because if you try to hide things, people always find you out online. They may not find you out right away, but they always find you out. And there's thousands of examples we can go through on that. What they want is they want you to share expertise. They do not want you to market to them or to sell to them, right? So if one of you guys stopped me and said, hey, I want to go have a coffee with you because I think that, I have a product that you need, you would probably go, oh, wow, I'm really out of time, But if someone said to you, wow, I tried something and I learned something, I think it could help you. Would you, maybe want to go share a coffee? You might be willing to go sit down with them, right? And this whole area being responsive and consistent. You're working now in work time. For instance, I have a community for my sellers. I have a group of 1,800 sellers at IBM. I had committed in my mind I'd get back to them in 48 hours if they came to me with a question. I thought that was pretty good, right? 48 hours, 1,800 people. I travel all over the world. But I've got a lot of millennials who work for me, and they thought, anything more than 5 minutes is freaking not good enough, right? So, think about your responsiveness. I'll give you a quick example. KLM Airline. I fly them in Europe. They promise if you tweet them with an issue, 15 minutes they'll get back to you, and in an hour they'll solve your problem. That's their service level agreement. I was flying in Amsterdam. My flight was canceled. I looked at the long line to rebook. I decided, hey, I know how to tweet. I'll tweet. So I tweeted, and in 10 minutes they called me back. Miss Carter, we've rebooked your flight. Go to gate 17. Have a great day. I was very happy. A couple weeks later, I got stuck again in Europe with a U.S. airline that will remain nameless. And I decided, they canceled my flight. Instead of waiting in the line, I'll try the same thing I tried for KLM, right? Why not? So I tweeted them. 6 months later, the airline, seriously, 6 months later, they came back to me and they said, Miss Carter, we're still working on it. Now, I was hoping they didn't think I was still sitting in that airport waiting for them to get back to me. So your responsiveness is really important. In fact, there's a whole website now that talks to you about companies providing an expectation of how long it will take you to get back to them, right? So that you do set an expectation. Like now I tell people on my site 48 hours, so they don't expect 5 minutes. They expect 48. If I exceed the 48 hours, that's great. In the middle, I think is something really important. And that is that you have to know who your influencers are. So 15% of your customers influence everybody else. 15% of your employees influence everybody else. 15%. 5 different studies, by the way, that show this number is true. So what's the question you want to know? Who are they? Who are those 15%, right? So this is an example. This is Asian paints. I wanted to give you some examples from Asia because Asia is also on fire right now for social. So this is Asian paints, and what they do is they're a market leader in India selling paints. They wanted to reach outside of India, and the first question they asked was, is the trust equation different in India versus other cultures? And the answer is yes, right? So they had to learn what was most trusted in different markets that they went into. And in some markets, it's interior designers. And so they form a relationship. They don't buy them off. They form a relationship with those interior designers, doing things like communities for professionals, professional decorators. In some areas, it's all about, do you have a mobile application for me? I'm a painter. I'm on a job. I don't have access to, a kiosk. I need something on my mobile app. So in each question they asked, for this audience, Laura said, make sure you know the audience. For this audience, what's going to be the trust factor for this audience? What's going to build that relationship with that particular audience as you move forward? This is another example. This is CEMEX. I use this example because I have a lot of customers who say, you just don't know my company. We could never be social. So I show them CEMEX because this is a true brick and mortar company. They sell cement. That's what they do. By the way, they won Harvard's Management 2.0 award this past year for their innovative management based on social. A cement company. I've been to see them in London, in Thailand, and in Mexico, and they are truly innovative. And what did? They started internally first, figuring out who the influencers were inside, and now they've gone external with their suppliers, who are those trusted people. So they didn't try to go after 1 million people. They figured out those 15% and got those 15% then to be their brand army to go after everybody else. So the question then is, how do you find out those 15%? So this is an example. This is done with one of my partners, Deep Mile. And one of the premises, this is United Nations. They came to us and they said, we want to take a look at the Egyptian crisis. Our theory, United Nations theory, is that the person with the most Twitter followers who was tweeting about Egypt was one of those tippers, one of those 15%. And it's a pretty logical assumption, but it would be a wrong assumption. Because you can't just look at the number of followers. It's not just about numbers, it's about quality and who's following you, right? What is their influence? So this is just an example. The person with the most followers on the Egyptian crisis was actually Justin Bieber. Do you guys all know Justin? If you don't, my daughter has posters in her bedroom. I can give any of you some. I have extras. So Justin actually jumped in on the Egyptian crisis. He had 7.4 million followers at the time. Do you think he was the most influential on Egypt? No, he was not. In fact, he did have some reactions, but it was very few. He actually only touched about 294 people. Even though he tweeted to 7.4 million, he only touched a few. On the upper right was someone that's a mass influencer, someone who has a lot of influence in the space. He only had 6,900 followers. But if you see his little heat map there, his messages and his influence, his subject matter expertise, his transparency engendered trust to this particular audience. And he actually was one of the core people. You can see I actually took away his picture because I don't want anybody to know who he was. He was actually the core guy in the Egyptian crisis. So don't think I know exactly who my influencers are because I've got these 5 people who have 10,000 followers apiece. That may not be the most influential person. Now, also know that this varies based on topic. So we talked about Egypt. If I did music, would Justin Bieber be at the top? Absolutely. In fact, I ran it. He would be at the top, along with Lady Gaga for sure. So I just wanted to show you there are tools to find out your tippers. It's really hard to do without a tool. Lots of tools out there. I'll just show you one example. So what this is a map of a community. And what it shows you is who's influencing who. So if you look at my little community here, you can see a big group of folks, and it will actually identify Sally is very influential in this particular topic, and Larry in this topic. In another topic, it may be a group of people, right? Because they then have their own group of followers. So figuring who those people are is really important, and it is one of the things we do in the session, but we won't have time to do that here today. But let me just pause for a second. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on it? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, you mentioned DeepMile, and then is this a different tool?
DeepMile is a partner. So on this one, the tool that they used is an IBM tool. I work for IBM, so truth and disclosure. I'm just going to show you my tools because that's what I use.
Okay, so DeepMile
Is an IBM partner, yeah. So truth in advertising, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'd be happy to sell you something, but I'm not trying to sell you something. But this is our tools. There are other tools out there. But what it does is it tracks down who those influencers are, right?
So that'd be like, Clout is now, it tracks your.
Great, yes. So Clout would be that for personal. There's also engagement databases. We'll talk about engagement here in a second. Dachis Group has an engagement database, DACHIS. Clout is one for personal that can measure personal clout. And then this is one that measures based on subject. That's right. And in fact, Clout is K-L-O-U-T. Also, there are some companies who pay for Clout. There are a lot of companies who don't think the Clout score is valid. And I don't know if you saw the test, but it was blogged about a lot. This person pretended like they were going to have a baby. So they posted baby pictures to Facebook and to LinkedIn. And of course, everybody likes to see beautiful babies. And they had funny baby videos. And it took their Clout score from a 21 to a 50 in a lot of business subjects. Yeah. So there are questions about different tools. And I'm not saying yes or no to Clout. I use Clout, but there are a lot of tools out there today that calculate it. Yep. Yes, sir.
This is the IBM one?
This one is an IBM one. It's based on IBM Connections.
Atlas?
Yes. It's a widget on top of IBM Connections.
So is this like as far as cost goes, is this like enterprise level, or are there software
Cloud. There's a cloud-based tool as well. You could, if you're we have a lot of small companies that use it as well. So you could do a cloud-based solution if you wanted.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. But does the concept make sense? Because I think it's the concept I want you to walk away with. The concept of finding your tippers, whether you use Clout, a free tool that's out there, whether you use Engagement DB, which is a Dachis tool you have to pay for, whether you use something like IBM has. There are lots of ways to figure this out. I think the really important thing is that you figure it out. And yes, ma'am. Yes, that's what this is. So, I'm sorry, say that to me one more time. You can use it externally. You can use it for Facebook, for LinkedIn. You can use it, you'd buy this tool. You can use Clout for free, KLOUT.com, started by two guys from Harvard. It does. Yeah. It's hard. You can do it with Clout, but it's hard. A tool like this or like the engagement database from Dachis is more targeted at just finding out the tippers. There aren't any free tools that are easy to find it out, but you can use a free tool to find it out. Yes? It's whatever you want. It could be whatever you want. So you could go after Facebook. Now Facebook has particular APIs that you have to watch out for, that they'll allow you access to. Some of them you have to pay for. You could go after LinkedIn. You could go after Blogsphere overall. You could create your own community, which is what this is. This is a personal community I have of my own, and it's based on that community, based on a particular subject. So I also have a client who does biotechnology. They started their own community. They've got about 10,000 members, and they use this to figure out, of the 10,000 members for biotech, who's most influential in their community. So you can use it in different ways. Okay? Everybody okay so far? Okay. So I'm going to go on then to engagement. So engagement now, so you've got your goals and your culture. We talked about that. You're going to develop your trust plan, which we did not go through, but I will give you the handouts for that, right? The trust plan, which involves figuring out who those influencers are, right? And that'll be really important for generating more engagement as well. And then engagement, very simply, is all about moving a customer or an employee from being a spectator to being a participant. That's really all engagement is, right? So a spectator watches, they watch from a distance, they're not really emotionally attached. Someone who's participating is in the game with you, right? They're right there with you. So I'll give you an example. We have a product at IBM that we developed by crowdsourcing. So crowdsourcing is you create a community and you allow clients and IBMers to vote on the next feature or function for this particular product. So you're developing the product with your customers. It's called crowdsourcing. Some people call it collective intelligence, ideation, all different names. We had 20 IBMers that were the official developers of the product, produced the product. We had a big IBM conference and we wanted to acknowledge this IBM team who developed this product. But remember, all the ideas came from our clients. So we had 8,000 people at the conference. We had sat this little 20-person development team at the front. We were going to ask them to stand up. When we made the announcement, would everybody who helped develop this product please stand up? We had 1,000 people stand up. Impactful, right? Because 1,000 people, not 20, 1,000 people felt like they were the developers. They were not a spectator, they were a participant. Does that make sense? The difference between the two? So a couple of examples. This is an example from Indonesia. Bumba Desa. It's a restaurant. And what they've done is they use a cloud-based solution and they have engaged food critics. So a food critic will come into their restaurant and have the food. And then typically what they do is write about the food, right? Write about the experience, the atmosphere. Well, what Bumba Desa did is they said, you know, some food critics get home and they have questions, right? They want to know what was in the food. They want to understand why we greeted someone this particular way. And so what they did is they set up a community for food critics. So if you come into their restaurant to judge their food, you can now communicate with the chef, with the person who greeted you. And you can ask the chef for their recipes. You can talk to the owner of the restaurant. And they've now expanded, very small company, they now expanded from Indonesia to Malaysia to Singapore. So they're now expanding in Asia based on part of this strategy to engage the food critic in the discussion. We started talking about gaming. Gaming, if you don't have gaming in your strategy, you definitely want to do it. I think they have a couple sessions on gaming here. Gaming is one of two things. The top part of this gaming example is a real hero, a real villain. You compete, you're the hero, you're competing against a villain, you're trying to learn a concept. If you play a game, you have 80% higher recall than any other form of communication. So if I had been a game, you guys would remember much more of what I'm saying. Okay? Average age of a gamer today, 35. It's not your kid. In the United States, there are more women gamers than men gamers. In fact, in the United States, not in Europe or Asia yet, but in the U.S., 52% of the gamers in the U.S. are women. So, two types of games. You want to invest here. You want to look here for sure. So mark my words. In the next couple of years, if you're not in this space, you will be left behind. So the top is you engage with kind of a game, a simulation game like you'd see your kids play or maybe you play, right? If you play Angry Birds or anything like that. So top, City 1, this is the #1 IBM demand gen tactic. This is the #1 way we recruit new customers to IBM. What is it? It's a game that you play off of IBM.com. You have a hero, you are the hero, you play against a villain, and you try to solve water management or traffic management or emergency response systems. And as you do that, you're competing against a villain, you get a score. Once you get a score, you want to post it to Facebook because you had a great score, right? And you want to be social, you want to share that. And in order to share your score, you have to give me your registration information. 82% of the people who play this game are C-level executives. Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Sales Officer. Yeah, so you wondered what your senior team was doing? They're playing my game. So the other piece of gaming is at the bottom. It's about taking a behavior that you want and incenting that behavior. You would be surprised what people will do for a badge. So you can see the virtual badges over there, right? A consumer-based company in Korea used badges to give away to their clients to increase the number of recommendations that they got. And their recommendations grew 9 times 9 times the number in 3 months of their nearest competitor in Japan, just by awarding their clients badges. Yes. In fact, there's a virtual gifting survey that said that people today actually prefer a virtual gift to a t-shirt or a water bottle. Yep. So lots of different ways you can do this. If you're not doing this, this is a great way to engage. Great way to engage. Lots of companies doing this today. Farmers Insurance does this today. IBM does this today. Chevron Oil does this today. And I could go on and on and on. And then the next way to engage is to engage via mobile devices and by leveraging peers to teach or to educate. So this is an example of Slumberland, another small company based in the Midwest. And what they decided to do is to completely change the way they enable their teams, right? The way they train their teams. Instead of having professional people set up a camera and they have to go to class or they have to watch a particular session, what they've done is they have real sellers, top sellers. They get a flip camera. They videotape how you sold whatever. I think one of them was on a mattress. One was selling a couch. And it's completely changed the way that they train. They've gone from 11 stores to 120 stores by sharing these best practices on a mobile device. You see here it's featured on an iPad. Simple engagement tactic, right? Using a mobile device, and everybody wants to see themselves on camera, and all your friends want to see yourself, and there you go. You go away. Okay, so we're going to take just about 2 minutes on our engagement sheet, and we're going to go on to the last 2 areas, okay?
Yep, very quick.
Sorry.
So to Sandy's point, you need tactics. You need to figure out how are you going to engage with your customers. And 3 primary areas. One is inside of identifying with them. Make it personalized, right? You can't, one size does not fit all anymore. So gone are the days where I can just throw up, a website or have one messaging that's going to be good for everybody. So figure out who is your targeted audience, back to those tippers, those influencers, to the group that, we talked about the audience that was going to be affected. Figure out who that is and segment your audience and target them, right? So that's inside of the first bit. And then make sure that your goals are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic. Have a time frame, because anything without a time frame is, what is a task without a time frame? Anybody? It's a suggestion, right? So if you're not serious about it, then don't put a time frame. But if you're serious, then put a time frame. And the relevancy. What is the benefit, right? So give it some meaning. The next thing is, basically, I'm going to skip one. I'm going to come back to it. But integrated. Think about your experiences. If the website you go to basically forces you to go to another website and you can't find your way back, how do you feel? Lost, upset, yeah, thumbs down, right? It needs to be a fully integrated experience. So whatever you're going to do, make sure it's integrated into that user experience. Engaging, it has to be interactive, two-way, right? That two-way relationship. So figure out how you're going to do that. Whether it's going to be, Facebook, LinkedIn, Sandy talked about mobile, right? Have a strategy, know where it is you want to engage and how it is you're going to engage. And again, we go into much more detail in this on the workshop, and if you're interested, we're more than happy to talk to you at the end about how to do one of these workshops at your company. So with that, I'm going to move on.
Any questions on engagement? It's really about figuring out the right area, the right thing for you, right? What works for the audience that you've selected. So it all goes back to your goals and your culture and your trust plan, all linked together. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Everybody with us? Yeah or no? If you're not, raise your hand. We do. We want to answer any questions. Okay, or come see us after too, because I know we're trying to consume a lot, but we wanted to make sure you had the kind of a full view. Thank you, Laura. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next thing that you do is you're going to pick out your process, and I'm going to just kind of show you a couple of examples. So this is back to CMEX again. I wanted to show you how far they've gone with their award-winning deployment of social. As I said, they've won the Harvard Management 2.0 award last year. And not only do they have ways that you can solicit input, but can you see that little graph down there with the red, yellow, green? What they're now doing is they're embedding this into the way that they pay people. So based on the region, Thailand, Mexico, maybe a functional area, marketing or sales, The number of suggestions that you give will go into the way that you're rated as an employee. And for their suppliers, which they're a B2B company, so they're not B2C, the suppliers who also give them suggestions also will have a higher rated status as a supplier. So they're actually using this and saying, those clients and those employees who invest in me and my company and CMEX, I'm going to make them a more elite customer. I'm going to pay them more as an employee because they're investing in my company's future in the way that I do this. And then this is an example of something simple you can do inside your company. This is again on this whole area of learning. I don't know, how many of you guys have looked at social learning today? This is really one of the most hot use cases for social inside a company, which is how do you get your people trained? I'll give you a great story. We have a set of architects, so we're a technology company, and we wanted to train them on some new activities, and we put training out there, and they said, we don't have time to take it. You know, we're too busy, don't have time. So we did a survey just to kind of see how they use their time. And we looked at both weekend time, you know, kind of their full view of time. As we looked at that, they spent 10 hours a day playing Angry Birds. 10 hours, not a day, sorry, a week, not a day, a week. 10 hours a week playing Angry Birds. So that says that they had the time, they just weren't taking the time to do the training. So this is one of the things that we've done at IBM. We've revamped the way that we train. We actually have peers train peers, not an authority figure train a class, which is a millennial big trend, right? Millennials don't want to learn from someone in authority, they want to learn from a peer. So if you look at this, this basically goes through a set of things that we might want to train someone on, and then employees videotape themselves on how they would do a particular task. In fact, one of the training videos we had was done by a gentleman. He actually filmed it in his backyard. Behind him, his daughter's swinging in her swing. At first, I got a little distracted, but she's swinging in the swing. But he discusses how to do a particular thing. It was downloaded by 52,000 IBMers because it was good content, right? And they trusted the source. He was a tipper. He was an influencer. So this is another way that you can embed social into what you're doing as a business as well. Now, one of the things that we teach you is to how to put a business value onto a social initiative. And I think this is really important because social isn't just for fun. It's not just something to do because it's a trend. It's something to do because it's good business. This is a McKinsey study that came out, and if you guys don't have the study, you definitely should get it. And what it does is it goes back to that premise of inserting social into a process. So I showed you IBM inserting social into the process of learning, CMEX inserting social into the process of innovation, TD Bank inserting social into crowdsourcing with their clients, right? So all these people didn't do social over to the side, set up a Facebook page, and just say, okay, go to it. They embedded it into what they do every day. So these are the results of doing that. On average, from the McKinsey study, if you insert this in customer service, so like the example I gave you from Apple, for instance, you get an on average 20% increase in your customer sat rating. If you insert it into innovation, like we talked about with CMEX, on average 20% greater success in the products you introduce. That's huge. Like to a company to IBM, that's huge. I bet it's huge for you guys as well. If you use it for talent management, which I think HR will be the next frontier for social, you not only have a 30% faster speed to find that expert, that new hire, but you also reduce your cost by 15%. So 30% faster access to getting that right person, 15% reduction in cost in finding that person. So this is another part of the workshop area we don't have time to go through today, but it's figuring out that right process for you and developing your business case. And let me just bop over here real quick and I'll show you. There's a little spreadsheet that you can go through and enter in, different materials so that you can figure out for you and for that initiative, what's the business case behind it. Does that make sense to people? I see a lot of people fail because this is still brand new. It's like the internet was, many moons ago, where you're not just going to sell it based on it's really cool, it's really sexy. I heard about it at WITI. You're going to sell it when you go back to your board, your business leader, your executive by saying, this is going to make us much more effective. And I think as women, having the credibility of a business case behind your suggestion is very powerful to get credibility in the business world. Questions on that? Make sense? Okay. Okay, so the next workshop we're going to do here real quickly is on reputation and risk. And this is probably the #1 area I get asked to come into. I'll tell you another quick story. I was flying to Canada, got trapped on the tarmac on LaGuardia Airport, and was sitting beside a CEO. After about 2 hours being stuck there, the CEO turned to me and he said, so, you know, what do you do, right? He's not really interested, but I pulled out my iPad and I said, I do social business. Let me show you. Got about halfway through the presentation, and he said, you know, this is really interesting, but my board and I opted out of social. We voted and we opted out of social. And I did all I could possibly do not to laugh. Because how do you vote to be opted out of social? So I pulled up an analytical dashboard and I showed him that people were talking about his company, and I got really lucky. You know, some days you get really lucky. 2 days before, one of his competitors posted a video about him. It was really great. It was so great. And so he's sitting there, he says, can you hang on a second? And he actually dialed his CMO, his Chief Marketing Officer. And why in the world are we voted? And these people are talking about us, right? Like you could send a message to all your clients and say, we voted, don't talk about us anymore. But why did he opt out? Why did he want to opt out? He wanted to opt out because he thought it was too risky. He thought people were going to say something about him that he could not control, right? That was what he was concerned about. When in reality, it's more risky not to be in the conversation, not to comment on the video, not to be engaged, than to opt out. So a couple things I'm going to show you here. This is Ginny Rometty. We have a woman CEO at IBM for the first time in our history. She is going to make her mark by being one of the greatest social CEOs of all time. She really is. She kicked off her first day on the job with us with a video blog. So not only is she doing risk mitigation, she's doing reputation management. She's proactively out there. And she did something so fabulous as a CEO. She became a collaborative CEO. She went out there and said, look, I'm smart enough to have a vision. I want IBM to be an essential company, but I can't do it myself. So customers, IBM employees, tell me what essential means to you. So I'm going to set the vision, and I'm going to do it via a video blog, which is highly trusted, by the way. And then I want to hear from all of you. Tens of thousands of comments coming in every day from people who want to help us become an essential company. CEO study we just released. I don't know if you saw it. If not, you should take it to your CEO. CEO study said 2 really important things. Today, only about 15% of CEOs or senior leadership participate in social. In 3 years, that number will be greater than 60%. Forrester commented that by 2015, CEO searches will require a CEO to show their digital reputation score. Could be through something like Clout, could be something else, but they'll be required to show their score. Secondly, if you look at this little box here, we talked about trust being so important. Employees and customers trust a CEO or senior leader more if they openly communicate on social. And it's not by a little bit, it's 82% greater if your senior leader or your CEO communicates in social. So you guys all need to go back. If you are a CEO, you need to look at this. If you're not, you need to take the initiative and go back to your companies and help them to become a social CEO, a social senior leader, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to, I think it's the last, no, second to the last sheet, there's a risk management plan. What we're going to look at are a couple things. To respond to social issues, you need to have an alert system. And that means red, yellow, green, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some way to rate what is said about your company. Because every one of you, I can make you a promise. Anybody who's out there on social, something bad will be said about you. I can promise you. Promise you, it will be. Every Fortune 100 company that's in social, and those that are not, have all had something negative said about them, all of them. So you're not going to respond to everything said about your company. You need an alert system. You need a way to listen. You need to know that someone's talking about you, right? You need to be able to figure out who responds to what, and then you need to be able to act quickly. So I'll give you a couple quick examples. Nestle, they actually had an alert system. They actually listened, and they found that Greenpeace attacked them, but they didn't empower their employees to respond in the US. Only a small team in Europe could respond. So Greenpeace knew this. So when did they attack them? Friday afternoon, so Europe shut down. On a holiday weekend, Europe shut down on Monday, because they know that the US is going to see all these comments coming in, but they can't do anything about it. And that's exactly what happened. Wall Street Journal called the US office on Monday because the US was opened. They had to say no comment because they weren't empowered. And it was cover story of Wall Street Journal. Domino's Pizza. Now I have to say this. Now they're a great social company. I always tell them I'll say this now. Now they're a great social company. They do this. But at the time, they had no alert system. So they told all their employees, go out there and be social. So a couple of employees took cheese, stuck it up their nose, videotaped it, put it on the pizza, posted it to YouTube, became an overnight YouTube sensation. But Domino's did not know that that videotape had been posted because they didn't have any way to listen. They had no listening mechanism. So for 3 days, that video was out there, gaining the charts. Once it got on David Letterman, somebody noticed it. But their action was not good. Their action is they had their CEO stand up, videotape a response, but he read it. And basically, if you watch it, it's actually still on YouTube. All you can see is the top of his head, and he's reading this stuff. He even stumbles over some of the words on social, like YouTube and Twitter. I think he said tweeter or something like that. So not very effective. So you need to make sure you have this in place. So there is a worksheet in here that I want you to think through. The first step is, do you have some way to listen? Do you have a tool? Doesn't have to be a tool for money, but do you have a way to listen? TweetDeck? Do you have, triggers or alerts through Google? Do you have something set up so you know if someone says something about your company, your product, yourself, a senior leader, do you know? And once you do you know who can respond on your behalf? Someone attacked IBM once and we did not respond. We actually alerted our customers that this had been done, and our customers responded on our behalf, which is the best way to do it. So do you have a brand army? Do you have employees that are considered subject matter experts? Do you have your friends or your advocates, a university professor, customers, partners, suppliers? Have you already formed a relationship with them so that they can help you? Do you have that digital council set up so that you know who's going to respond, right? So for Domino's, that was serious enough for a CEO to respond, right? So you don't want, your customer support person responding. Do you know who should respond? And then do you have an alert system in place? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, red, yellow, green. Whatever your alert system is, do you have that in place so that you know who's going to respond to what and how quickly they're going to respond? And then do you have a way to activate people? So in the midst of something like this, you're very emotional. Do you have a way to activate people? So this is kind of what, if you fill this out, really think through it, run through scenarios with your team. And I will tell you, IBM just had one of these. We had a comment posted. We had 10,000 responses to the comment in less than 30 minutes. Some people got very emotional, but luckily we had a plan in place, so we went not off of emotion, but we went off of a plan. Make sense? Okay. I think, what time, we done?
We are, yeah.
Done. Okay.
Pretty much.
So let's the last piece is analytics, and you have the data sheet in here on what types of things you want to listen for. And making sure that you know. And I would highly encourage, this is a dashboard that I look at every day. So this is looking at, I run social business for IBM. So every day I look at what you guys think about what we're doing on social. I look on Twitter, I look on news feeds, I look on blog posts, I look on forums, and every day I know whether people are positive, whether they're negative, or whether they're neutral on what we have going on.
I was just going to add one last thing on the listening and analyzing. If I could give you one piece of advice in that space, think about the 3 top questions you want answered. And that's what you need to be listening for, such as, what is my competition doing? So that's a question. So then your sub-themes would be like, the names of your competition would be your keywords. How am I being perceived in the marketplace is a question. So think about the questions you want answered, and that will help you to understand what you need to be listening for and how to analyze your data.
Very good, very good. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful to you. I know it was, we gave you the worksheets. We'll give them to you in soft copy too, so you can fill them out. But I wanted you to start thinking through this, not just listen, but I wanted you to be participants with me, not just a spectator, but to start to participate and understand this, because I think this is a place that women can really excel. And I'll just end with the opportunities out there right now in social are tremendous. If you look at, these are some of the new roles that are coming up, and I will tell you, it is predicted that there will be 5 times the number of jobs created by social than there was from the internet. Think about that. 5 times as many. And I want as many women as possible can get those jobs. And these are the type of jobs you're going to see. Social learning manager. So how do you get others to contribute content and make it viral? Community manager. Community manager year to year was the highest increase in salary worldwide because of the lack of supply of great community managers. Social analytics manager, how to look at that data and figure out what to do. Reputation and risk manager, there's a role for people just to manage the risk and the reputation. That plan that we talked about, putting that into action. And then social customer support manager, how do you get your customers to support your other customers, to reduce your cost and increase the quality and participation of your clients. Lots of opportunity here. I'm so glad you invested time on a Sunday. Make sure you come see myself or Laura. Laura is something we call on my team a tiger. That means that a tiger team member. She is a social business tiger. There aren't that many in the world, and we're building up more and more women tigers. And so she is also an expert. So if you have questions, make sure you come see me, but also make sure you come and talk to Laura, okay? Thank you guys very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.